Hey folks, Jonathan here. Figured it was about time to do an update video on this sawmill. I've been running this thing for about, well, a little over a year now, and have sawed a lot of wood with it. Just finished up a maple tree. And as you can see from this pile of sawdust, I have sawed a bunch of wood. And have had a few little issues, nothing major. And let me see, I just finished this and I actually hit a nail, and that's the reason that you'll see these dark lines on this board. I just continued with it. Now this nail was probably 3 inches deep, because you would have had, well, you would have had 2 inches there, one here, and then this board, and then the nail, which is kind of weird to have it so far in. And it's not lead, so it's definitely a nail, and it actually hit that board and it hit this one and right there. Now the dark spot started after I hit, because it actually, I mean, it ruined the blade is what it done. And anytime you hit a nail, you're gonna ruin the blade. But I did go ahead and finish, because I mean, it wasn't cutting bad. It wasn't cutting where a lot of times it'll cut higher and lower and you'll get waves and stuff. It was actually just giving me a weird surface, as you can see. And I didn't mind that for what this board was for, so just finished it up. So a blade is $15 if you can get that much wood. I mean, you know, a couple boards might be $15, or, you know, nowadays I don't know. These are 13-inch wide maple, and this is one log, and so it's pretty good size. But anyway, let me see. A lot of different ways of doing this. You learn a bunch of stuff really quick. One thing you do learn is these blades actually, they're pretty good for cutting steel. I give it a 9 out of 10 for cutting steel. I give it a 1 out of 10 for staying sharp. It'll stay sharp enough to cut your finger off, but it don't like to cut wood after it cuts steel. And actually, I cut that. That used to be straight. So, of course, that ruined a blade. And so, most anything that happened was all my fault. Stuff that I done. You can't let it hit your vice grips if you got vice grips on, like I do right there. I put a little knock on this one, but I didn't do this one. And then I brought it back here and set it, and I can't get my welder to it. So that wasn't very smart. Now I can run this carriage to the center. I can pick this up with a forklift. With this being on the I-beams that it's on, you don't really have to do much leveling and stuff anyway. You know, it won't twist. And if you do a sawmill, or if you buy a sawmill, my suggestion first thing is to put it on a heavy frame. Don't depend on that little cheap stuff that they give you. And let me see, what kind of problems have I had? Okay, when I first built it, I had to put a motor on there. That didn't have anything to do with operating. It just, the one that was on it was no good. So I bought it. The chains and the bearings and sprockets I bought new, and this engine I bought new. Everything else is pretty much used stuff. This is off a Nissan. Went with the mini spares, and there's a few reasons I went with them. You know, this wasn't just jumping into something without any research, or without, you know, thinking about this for, you know, quite a while. I've seen motorcycle tires used, I've seen car tires used, trailer tires, and then of course I've seen pulleys used with just the belts on them like this. They would use belts that protrudes out of the pulley, and that would give a surface for the blade to come in contact with. And I've done it this way for quite a few reasons, but one is, first, easy to get a hold of. Bearings are, you know, easy to get if you had a problem. That's a front wheel bearing, that's a rear wheel bearing. and 2002, I think, Nissan. I have checked. I've got it wrote down. But some of the last 4-lug stuff. You know, most of this stuff now is all 5-lug. So anyway, mini spares hold a lot of air. These are 60 psi. A lot of them are 80 to 85, but they're nice and really hard tires. They're low profile in comparison to a higher profile from a car tire, which gives you a lot more squish. I mean, that's the best way of putting it. These are hard as a rock, and that's what I wanted. I wanted something that was going to be hard so I could get a good tension off the blade, was going to be soft enough that it didn't, you know, hurt the blade or give problems, and was also the crown, which is the rounded section. You really need a crown on it. You don't want a flat. You definitely don't want to dip down in. It'll do the opposite effect of what you want. So, you know, there's quite a few reasons to use these, or why I used them. Now, so if you used a pulley like this instead of a wheel, and it was, let's just say 15 inches like, or 16 inches like this rim, instead of the 22 inches that this rim and tire is, your blade has to turn much quicker, and it can crack over time. I have not had any cracks or any broken blades. I have not had a blade come off or anything like that. So what this comes down to, you know, there's a science behind the reason that this blade stays on here, and this blade will find its place. It's got its place, and it's going to stay there no matter what. If you move the blade forward, it's going to move itself back. If you move it back, it's going to move itself forward. So it's got a happy spot, that's what I call it, that it stays. It does not hurt the tire. The tires have not had any issues whatsoever. These are actually 2 different tread, but in all honesty, it does not matter what you drive the tires with. It doesn't matter what you anything outside of that wheel and that little wheel. Anything in between, it's the important part. As long as your blade stays on, anything from this wheel all the way around to that, back to it, don't matter. Your blade pitch, your you know, levelness, every bit of it only matters between there, and you want it to stay on here and turn, and that's basically it. And I pushed this blade through. Everybody said you can't do it, you can't push it through. Well, I've cut a lot of wood, and I've had no issues with pushing the blade through. And when I say push the blade, this is my powered wheel. My blade pushes that way. This is not my powered wheel, so it's pushing the blade across the top of this one and pulling back. But what you got to realize is it's pulling. It's just pulling from this side. It's pulling from the top instead of the bottom. And you know, everybody thinks, well, that's going to cause an issue. Well, it don't. There's no issue there. If you can get enough blade tension, which you want to have anyway, then you'll have no trouble with that. Now, if you can't get enough blade tension, if your tires are too soft, like a motorcycle tire, too thin, you know, it's not enough air or anything like that, of course you're not going to be able to get enough blade tension, and it probably will cause problems. But that was the whole point of using these tires, is because I knew I would, and I know I can, and I know the blade don't force, as you can see, it don't force the tire down to where it's concaved. Like I said, the science behind this is when this blade tries to walk off, it actually puts a sort of a twist in the blade that forces it back on. It steers itself back on, which is parts that I had, so that was the difference. Now, I did not 100% finish this thing. That was one of my problems. I got this thing down to where I had a lot of stuff tack welded together, and then I moved it away from where I had the welder, and I had some other stuff I had to get done, and I just didn't take it back over and finish weld it. So I've got some finish welding to do. A lot of this stuff at the top, just like this, is just tacked. And now I haven't had any issues with it, but it's something that I really need to get taken care of. So on our box here, that's a 1-to-1 drive, and it's just a 90-degree gearbox. So these are Acme thread, and they're 1 inch, well, 5 threads per inch. So 5 turns of this brings it up an inch. Now, I had a lot of people say, you should have went with something higher, because 5, if you want to get a 1/2 inch, you got to go 2.5 turns. Get a 1/4 inch, you got to go 1 1/4 turn. But the problem is I'm glad I didn't go with like an 8, because if I went with 8, I would have to turn that thing 8 times just to get it to go an inch. And I've considered power feeding this partially. Maybe power feed and then have the hand feed to go ahead and fine tune it to get it where I want it. That's an idea, because you know, if you go down like I'm now, okay, I just cut a 2-inch board down here, and it's an inch, there's 1.5 inches between my pieces here and the actual I-beam. So if I want a quick measurement, now I've got this tape on the side here that is a magnetic tape, but if I want a quick measurement, I just measure from the yellow deck right there up to the blade, and it's automatically 1.5 inches, and then I add the extra distance. So if you measured it right now, and this is a 2-inch board, this is going to be 3.5 inches off the deck. So it's pretty simple. I mean, it's easy to get a board cut and cut it at the right thickness. And I actually cut these all here just a little bit under 1 inch. And the reason I done that is I wanted as many boards as I could get. I didn't need the strength, and we're not planing them, so it didn't really matter there. Don't like cutting maple. I don't know what it is about maple, the smell of it, the dust coming from it, it just don't taste good to me, and I don't like something. I think from childhood, maybe we cut a lot of maple firewood or something, I don't know. But anyway, I just don't like it. So, engine. This is considered, or they claim to be 18 horsepower. Now it's only 440 cc, so I don't know, it may be, don't get me wrong. It's strong. It's definitely a strong engine. Besides putting fuel in and changing the oil, it's pretty much just maintenance free. I mean, I bought this as an electric start because I didn't want to have to be pulling a rope all the time. But when you pull it and it starts the first pull every time, it really don't bother you too bad, because I actually, every time I run this thing to the end down there, I flip this up, which that tightens my belt. Emergency brake cable out of the same car that come from. So, and I just flip it up, and then I turn the engine off, and I raise it up and bring it back. Now I take the board off first before I bring it back, but I bring it back, and I'm always on this side of it. I'm not on the other side of it. So if for some reason I was to trip and fall, or something was to happen, I would fall into this pulley, but I'm not going to fall into that blade. There's no reason to be up there. So I start the engine up when I get back. I'll lower it back down where I need it. Adjust this to my speed, which I'm usually cutting on 3 to 4, depending on how fresh my blade is. I got forward and reverse, and so reverse is down, as you can see, and then you can speed it up. But I'll bring it back at 10, and I'll run it down at 3 to 4. So it's pretty quick. Bring it back, lower it down, do your next cut. And okay, issues I've had. Okay, not much. I actually hit, let me see, I guess these things, I probably don't have a good design. This one flips up and hangs out. Once it's pretty tall, so once I get so high, I got to let it down. There's got to, there's better ways, and I just didn't do the best way. This one here was up and it was out because it's so, my thread on it is so long. And when I say up and out, there you go, that's how they go, and then you would tighten this down. But I hit this on the bottom bearing right there, and broke the plate off. And well, I broke the bearing and the base off because I only had it tacked, of course, but it's actually right there. I laid it right there, and I just took the bolts out and laid it down there because I didn't want it flopping around. But it didn't really affect anything because all it does is hold the acme, bottom of the acme, to raise up and down, but everything else is solid in there. So it wasn't a catastrophic failure where I couldn't go anymore, but it was something that I'm going to have to address, and it only happened not because of failure. It happened because I let it hit something, which was not smart. You got to pay a lot of attention of what what's going to come down. If I cut it right here, you can see it would cut them in half. So they'd be flipped down at that low of a height. And you know, this board, it pretty much, like I said, just pushes over on the board. It don't pick up on the board, it don't bounce, it don't shake, it don't do any of that. So I don't really have a problem with just cutting through with it like it is. That's a heavy board, so I don't have any issues there. So haven't had any problems besides that. I've had a couple of these bearings go out. What I was doing was using a water hose, and I was just spraying as it cut because I didn't have a water system on this or a diesel. Some people use diesel fuel to put on their blade. I didn't have it on it, and I still don't. And so I was using a water hose, and I was just spraying some. Well, I was far too much water on it. The water gums up your sawdust, and it'll get in your chain, which wasn't good. It didn't hurt anything. It was just a lot of them in the chain. You could see it balled up, and didn't hurt anything, but I didn't like it. And then what was happening was I was spraying the end of these bearings, and I wasn't realizing that I was forcing water in to the seals, and the outer bearings went out a couple times. And you know, these was trying to lock up, and I couldn't figure out. I know I'm spinning them too fast for the bearing, but I've got 3 bearings in each one of them, and luckily they're really cheap bearings. So I mean, I keep quite a few extras in stock, and there's just snap rings that I can take out, and I can knock the bearings out and knock new ones in. But they definitely was an issue with that, and spraying in the water wasn't the best thing. So now what I've got is a spray bottle, and I just through here from this side, and actually right through the belt, I can spray in while it, you know, when I get ready to get, or when I start, I just take the bottle and spray directly to the blade, and on that side and the front of the log while it's heading that way, and it's been fine. I have noticed, I know this sounds kind of crazy, but when this blade gets a little bit of rust on it, and then you cut, and it puts a patina on it that's sort of a dark brown color. The pine tar and sap don't stick to it as good as it does when it's good fresh steel. So it actually works a little bit better after it gets some oxidation on it, or some rust, or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, I haven't had any issues with that, but I have had issues with too much water. So what you want on these blades, and after studying it, this is what I figured out. This is fully adjustable. It adjusts up and down, in and out, because this is the end of a 3-point hitch swivel. And with that, I can also bring it this way and this way. So what I've done, or the way that I can do it, you can adjust anything you want, and you can get your blade from this one to this one perfect. So from my studies, what I wanted was, I wanted this blade to be pushed down 1/4 inch. If it was laying flat, you'd push it down at least 1/4 of an inch. That way it gets some pressure up on your wheels. And you don't want it pushing this way. You actually want to, from this lip right here to the back of the blade, you want about 1/8 of an inch. And that way when the blade pushes back against it, it'll come back and just touch your roller. So perfect spot, works really well. These are going to spin fast because you're moving that blade pretty quick. Now my engine issues, what I was doing was running a really low RPM, and the blade speed's pretty high, and the engine, because it was running a real low RPM, was shaking a little bit. I didn't like that. All I did was increase RPMs. It sped the blade up a little bit. It wasn't real bad, but all the shake went away, and it ran perfect. So I'm not too far over idle, and I can cut any log I want to cut and not power down. I mean, you might hear it load a little bit, but the governor comes in, it just saws right on. So I'm 1000% happy with that Duramax engine. No problems at all. I mean, which it hasn't set for a long time either. I mean, as you can see from that dump truck load of sawdust, but you can see that I haven't let it sit too long. So we've cut beams and boards and trailer floors and stuff for the house, you name it, I've cut it. So anyway, so a few little repairs I need to do. I need to do some updating and changing on my hold downs. And I'm sitting here telling you this, I probably won't do any updating or changing on the hold downs because it does work. If I do again, I'd love to make it where it would cut a little bit longer. It'll cut 14'3", 14'4". I think I've cut some 14'7", was about as absolute long as I can cut, which would be nice to cut longer than that. I don't have to have it, but you also got to remember that I built this off of scrap, whatever I had. This is actually a stinger off the back of an old rollback that had the beam inside of it that pushed out, and then you'd put it up against the bumper and pick up a car. Just like I said, a lot of junk parts, a lot of scrap, and then I had to buy a few things, and it's worked out really well. Don't listen to a lot of the people that say you can't do that, you can't do that. That won't work. You can so-called push your blade through the wood. You're not going to have any issues with it. You absolutely can use spare tires. The blade's not going to fly off like, you know, people seem to think it's going to. There's a lot of things you can get by with on this. So don't let everybody tell you, you know, you can't do something when there's a lot of ways to do it. Build it as heavy as you can build it. This is pretty heavy, but I mean, you know, a lot of the problem that people have could be because their sawmill's so light. If this headstock or whatever you want to call it was light, you're going to get more movement, more play. That's heavy. I like it that way. Now, I used V wheels on each side and angle, and I thought about it later. I could have just used it on one side and used a flat on the other side and only guided on one side, but then once I got to thinking about it, we get so much sawdust on top that I think it's a whole lot better off not having it, because it does fall off. I would love to put some little brushes on it, so as it went, it would brush the top of it off. But you know, it's done well. I've got no complaints. Really be nice to have an air hose out here. Now, if you're going to have it completely portable to where you can't get power to your mill, then you probably don't want to run it on like I did. This is a 90 volt DC power unit. It's actually, you know, running on AC, but it changes to DC. I think it's 90. It might be 60 or 80. Heck, I can't remember. But anyway, it's a DC power unit. That way, it's easy reversible. It's easy variable speed. And this was, I think, possibly garage door or something. I don't know for sure. Bought that set up from a guy. And then, like I said, the motor was bad. I think I killed the motor. I think it was my fault. I'll tell you what I've done. I think the brushes were sticking in it, and I tapped it with a hammer, except I probably tapped it with a 3-pound sledgehammer and busted the magnets loose inside, and then it ruined it. So I think that was my fault. Should have known better. Probably did know better, just didn't do better. So anyway, that's something that you got to watch out for. And like I said, it's a nice setup, works good. I like the way it works. As you can see, there's more tacks. Now it's welding pretty good here and there, but I really need to get it around there and go through it and do some more heavy welding on it. And these magnet strips here, these are cheap. You can get them and then you can move them real quick and put them anywhere. I got one on the other side. I don't go over there, as you can see all that sawdust, but I mean, there's no need to go over there. I think that's about it. I mean, I wish I could, you know, if I'd have had more problems, I guess I could have told you a little better, but I mean, I just haven't had much problems with it. You know, I come out here and I shoot some oil on it up, you know, where the guide is up and down, and just go to work with it. And so far, I've readjusted one time, and just make sure you get your bolts tight. And I actually, as you can see, I've got a bolt out of it here because I'm cutting so wide of stuff sometimes. And I cut some stuff so wide that I would cut this end of it, and when it got up toward the other end, I had to actually move the log over. And it was wide, but it was curved, dog leg wood. So anyway, and I think some of this poplar I cut was should have been dog leg poplar. I'll give you an idea of one. I was cutting nice and straight, and that's how bad it curved. So I actually, because it was so tall, I couldn't go no farther. And so I stopped, backed up, took the chainsaw and cut it, and then took that piece off there. But yeah, some of this stuff's really, you can cut some really weird shaped stuff if you do it, you know, take your time, do it right. Just don't cut steel with it, like I have done too many times. The board that's laying here under it that I set it on, there's 2 nails in it. And this is actually a piece of hickory. Went through right there. There's 2 nails there. I pulled 5 or 6 nails out of 1 pine. I didn't hit them. I actually, you know, metal detected them and pulled them out. You know, you're gonna miss. You're not gonna get them all. You're gonna have, you know, you're gonna ruin a blade. Smith saw blades. There's 3 locations in the United States, and tell them what you want. They'll keep your credit card on file, and they don't give you any BS. I can be standing at the mill and I can order in 2 minutes and have blades here the next day. They weld them together, grind them, and send them to me. And 15 bucks a piece. I mean, you don't have to cut too many boards to get your $15. And if you screw a blade up, you know, you're not hurting yourself. You know, a board will cost you pretty good nowadays. And, you know, even cutting 2x4s, I mean, how long does it take to get $15 when they're anywhere from $5 to $8 a piece? Anyway, yeah, don't be scared to make one. They're not that tough. And don't be afraid of that blade. I wouldn't stand up here where, you know, it might get you, but, you know, there's no reason to be scared of that stuff. You know, there's a lot of people that, actually there's some people that said that I'd be dead by now, so it didn't work out for them too well. But, you know, give me a day or two. We'll see what happens. But as for now, we're still good to go. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody watching. If you got any questions, ask. I'll be more than glad to answer. You know, it'd been nice if I'd have done a little bit more completing on this and then maybe put some paint on it or something, but you know, that's okay. It's done fine. You know, it's done exactly what I needed it to do. And we're gonna get this poplar here to dry out, or maple, I'm sorry. I've cut some poplar too. I'd rather cut poplar than maple. I just don't like I don't like that smell and that dust. But anyway, all right, appreciate everybody watching. Till next time, bye.